I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing this kind of story, but life has a way of knocking you flat when you least expect it. I'd always trusted my wife, Lisa. We'd been together for 10 years, high school sweethearts, the kind of couple everyone around us. We had a good life, or so I thought. A nice house, decent jobs, the kind of stability that makes you think it's forever. Until it was. The trip was supposed to be a simple family vacation. Just the four of us, me, Lisa, our two kids, and my wife's best friend, Jenna, and her husband, Mark. We headed out for a week of camping, making memories, laughing around the campfire, kids playing in the dirt, typical summer stuff. I was looking forward to some quality time, maybe reconnecting after a stressful couple of months at work. But somewhere around the third night, something changed. Lisa was acting weird. She was unusually tense, often sneaking glances at her phone, deleting messages like she was hiding something. I chalked it up to her being anxious about the kids or maybe a work deadline she was stressing over. Honestly, I didn't want to think she could be hiding anything. That is, until I caught her. It was late, around midnight, quiet except for the crackling of the campfire dying down. I just finished a beer and was heading back to the cabin when I saw her. She was sneaking out, glancing over her shoulder like she was afraid someone would see her. Her footsteps were light, almost like a cat, and her face looked pale in the moonlight. My heart kicked up a knot forming in my stomach. I froze. My eyes followed her as she slipped out of the cabin, heading toward Jenna and Mark's place. At least, that's what I thought. I stayed behind, watching her through the thin curtain of the window. The cabin was dark. I saw her move through the shadows, then disappear from view. That's when I noticed the sock. A damn sock just lying outside the door, not her sock. It was a bit sweaty, slightly damp, like she'd taken her shoes off in a hurry. I picked it up, feeling the dampness soak into my fingers. Something was off. My stomach twisted. A few minutes later, I heard muffled voices, then a soft laugh, Jenna's voice. I realized, my wife's voice. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but the sound of it made my chest tight. The hair on my arm stood up. I knew somehow this wasn't just her sneaking out for a glass of water or some secret call. I had a sinking feeling. I stood there, the sock still in my hand, thinking about how I'd always trusted her, how she'd always said she was committed, how she'd sworn she loved me. And here she was, sneaking out at midnight. My fingers clenched into a fist, but I didn't move. I just watched, waiting for her to come back inside. When she finally slipped back in, her face was flushed, her hair a mess, and her eyes darted around like she'd been caught doing something she shouldn't. She looked at me, cold sweat beading on her forehead, and said, I got up to get some water. I couldn't sleep. I looked at her, my mind racing. Really? Because I saw you sneaking out. Socks outside, secret meetings at midnight, what the hell is going on? Her eyes flickered, and for a second I saw something in them. Guilt. Fear, whatever it was, it shattered whatever image I had left of her. I thought I knew her, but now I questioned everything. That was the moment I realized this vacation was the beginning of something I'd never expected. I'd always believed in honesty, in loyalty, but now I was staring into the abyss. And I just knew, this was only the start. I stayed silent then, but my mind was already devising a plan. I wanted answers, and I was going to get them. Something was off, and I had a gut feeling this wasn't just an innocent secret. It was something darker, something I needed to confront. I looked at her, my fists clenched, and said, "We're talking tomorrow, and I want the truth, no more lies." She nodded, but I saw the flicker of something else, guilt maybe, or fear. Either way, I knew this was going to change everything. And as I stood there under the ghostly moonlight, I cursed myself for ever trusting her blindly. Because trust, I'd learned that night, is the first thing to go when you find out someone you loved has been lying to you. And now, I was left staring at the wreckage of what I thought was a perfect life, wondering how the hell I was going to fix it, or if I even could. Want me to continue? The next morning was a slow, heavy thing. The sun peeked weakly through the trees, casting a dull gray light over the campsite. I woke up with a gnawing knot in my stomach, the sock still clutched in my hand from the night before. My mind kept replaying her face, the way she looked sneaking out last night. Guilt, fear, or something else entirely. I wasn't sure, but I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. Lisa was already up, trying to act normal, smiling, making breakfast for the kids, acting like everything was fine. but I saw the subtle tremor in her hands as she poured coffee. The way she avoided my eyes when I looked at her. She knew I knew, and she wasn't exactly trying to cover it up. I finally broke the silence as she handed a plate to our youngest. "We need to talk," I said, voice flat but firm. She paused, her fork midair. "About last night," I added. Her face lost its color for a second, but she recovered fast enough. "Look, I don't know what you saw," she said, voice trembling. I needed some air. Things have been crazy with the kids and work. I didn't mean for it to look bad. Really, because I saw you sneaking out at midnight," I shot back, glaring. "Socks outside your door, whispering at Jenna and Mark's cabin. What's going on?" She swallowed hard, her eyes flickering. "It's nothing, just a misunderstanding. I was out for a walk, that's all." But her voice was shaky and I could tell she was lying. The realization hit me hard. This wasn't just a one-time slip-up. There was something bigger underneath, something she was desperately hiding. I could feel the anger bubbling inside, but I kept my voice steady. "You lied to me about leaving town for work. You lied last night, so explain now." She looked down, her hands clenched into fists. Then she finally broke, her voice cracking. "Okay, fine, it's true. I met Mark last night. We just talked, nothing happened," I scoffed. "Nothing happened. I saw her sneaking out, Lisa. Socks soaked in sweat, whispering with Jenna's husband. Do you honestly expect me to believe that?" She looked like she'd been hit. "I didn't plan for it to go this far. It was just a stupid mistake. I don't love him, I swear. It was a moment of weakness. I was overwhelmed, okay? That was when the rage took over. I felt my fists tight. A moment of weakness, so all those years, all the vows, just a mistake. You think that's enough to fix this?" She looked at me, tears welling in her eyes. "Please don't do this. I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." Hurt? No, this was beyond hurt. This was betrayal of a different kind, but I didn't say anything. Instead, I told her to go inside and leave me alone for a bit. I needed space to think, to breathe before I exploded. I sat on the edge of the picnic table, feeling the rough wood bite into my palms. The sticky heat of the morning pressed down on me. My stomach was tight, my head pounding. All I could hear was the faint chirping of birds and the distant sound of the kids playing. But inside, everything was chaos. The more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about the infidelity. It was about control, respect, and what we'd built together. How did I miss the signs? Why did she lie? And most of all, what was I going to do now? I looked out at the woods, trying to calm myself. That's when an idea started to form, dark but clear. If she was going to cheat, she'd pay for it. Not with tears or pleas, but with something she'd never see coming. I wasn't about to go down quietly, not after I found out she'd been sneaking around behind my back. I pulled out my phone and started making some calls. I needed a plan, something airtight. I was going to find out exactly how deep this betrayal went, and then I'd make her regret it, whatever it took, because I wasn't just going to let her walk away from this. I looked back at the cabin, my jaw tightening. She was inside, pretending everything was normal, but I knew better. The truth was out, and I had no intention of backing down. This was the start of my revenge, whether she liked it or not. The day stretched on, slow and suffocating, but I felt alive with purpose now. I wasn't the same man who'd thought everything was perfect yesterday. No, now I was alert, angry, and ready to see this through. She'd lied, and I was about to make sure she paid the price. Want me to keep going? By late afternoon, I was already clear on my next move. I spent hours pretending to be normal, but inside my mind was racing. I replayed everything, her sneaking out, the sock, her trembling voice, the lies, all of it. I couldn't ignore the signs anymore. The trust was shattered into pieces, and I knew I had to act fast before she could cover her tracks or spin a story I'd believe. I decided to start with digging through her phone. It was risky, I knew that. If she caught me, it would be a disaster. But I couldn't just sit around and wait for something to happen. I had to see what she was hiding. I told myself I wasn't going to invade her privacy just for the sake of revenge, but at this point I was past that. I needed facts, proof. I waited until she was outside with the kids, playing near the lake, then slipped into the cabin. Her phone was on the kitchen table, unlocked, just sitting there like a gift. My hands trembled a little as I grabbed it, feeling like I was about to do something I'd regret, but I pushed that aside. I needed answers. Scrolling through her messages, I saw a lot of benign stuff, Work emails, grocery lists, a few pictures of the kids. But then I hit a message thread with Jenna. And that's when everything changed. "Tonight's the night," Jenna had written. "Can't wait to see you, be careful." My stomach dropped. That's when I realized this wasn't just some innocent meeting. They had plans. I looked further. There were pictures too, some she'd taken of herself, her face flushed, her lips slightly parted. It was clear they'd been planning this for a while. I felt my jaw tighten. I thought I knew her. I thought she was loyal, that we had something real. Turns out I'd been blind. I put the phone back exactly where I found it, my hands sweaty and trembling. I needed to think. No rash moves. I was going to confront her tonight, but first I had to be sure. Later, when she came back into the cabin, I was already waiting. She looked at me with that fake everything's fine smile, but I saw through it. "I saw the messages," I said flatly. "You're planning to meet him tonight. Jenna's husband. For what? More lies?" She froze, the color draining from her face. I don't know what you're talking about," she whispered, voice trembling. "Oh, you do," I said, voice cold. "You're planning to cheat again after all this, after last night." She looked like she wanted to crawl out of her own skin. "It's not what you think, it's just a mistake. I swear I was going to tell you." I shook my head. "No, Lisa, I'm done. I'm sick of the lies. You're done lying to me. You want to see him, fine, but I'm going to make you regret it." She started crying, begging me to forgive her, to give her a second chance, but I wasn't listening. I'd spent years trusting her, and she'd thrown it all away with one stupid affair. I had enough. I pulled out a sheet of paper from my pocket and started writing. Not a long speech, just a plan, something cold, calculated, and final. I was going to show her that she couldn't play me and get away with it, that I'd make sure she paid. She watched me, eyes swollen and pleading. "Please," she choked out, "don't do this." "Too late," I said, folding the paper and slipping it into my pocket. "Tonight, you're going to see what happens when you betray someone who loved you. You want to cheat? Okay. But I'm going to make sure you regret it every step of the way." She looked at me with a mixture of fear and disbelief, but I was already moving past her. I had a plan, and I was about to put it into motion. She thought she could lie her way out of this, but I was done being the forgiving husband. As I headed out, I felt the weight of the betrayal settle inside me. This wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about once trusting someone who'd broken that trust so completely. And now, I was going to teach her a lesson she'd never forget. I could hear her crying behind me, but I didn't look back. I was already counting down the hours until I'd confront her with the truth and the revenge that was coming with it. Want me to continue? Night fell slow and heavy. The woods around the cabin seemed darker, more ominous than before, as if they were watching, waiting. My stomach was tied in knots, but I knew I couldn't back down now. I had the plan, I had the evidence, and I had the resolve. I lit a cigarette and stared at her through the window, her silhouette moving nervously, packing, biting her nails. I had told her I'd confront her, but honestly, I'd already made up my mind. This was more than just a fight. It was about making sure she understood she couldn't keep playing with my life. I'd spent years building trust, and she'd shattered it in a matter of minutes. No more gentle words, no more begging for mercy. This was about sending a message. I waited until she finally sat down, her head in her hands, eyes red. I stepped out quietly, feeling the cool night air on my skin. The silence was deafening, every second dragging on like an eternity. When I approached her, she looked up, startled. "What's going on?" she asked weakly, voice trembling. I didn't waste time. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the paper I'd written earlier. "This," I said, voice steady, "is what you're going to do now." Her eyes widened as I unfolded it. It was a list, step by step, what I planned to do. I read it aloud. "First, I'm going to pack your things. You're leaving tonight. No more sneaking around, no more lies. Second, I've already contacted a lawyer. We're going to separate. You'll get what you deserve. Third, I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you did. I've got enough evidence to burn your reputation if I want. And finally, I've arranged for a little surprise tomorrow, something I think you'll remember for a long time." Her face turned ghostly. "You're serious?" "Oh, I am," I said. "I don't ever want to see you again. And tonight you're leaving. Pack your stuff. I'll help you, but don't think I'll be here waiting." She looked at me, tears streaming down her face, her hands trembling. "Please don't do this. I made a huge mistake. I'll fix it, I swear." I shook my head, disgusted. "You had your chance, you blew it, and now you're going to pay for it." I turned away, feeling a strange sense of relief mixed with rage. This was the end of us. The end of her lies, her betrayal. I'd never trusted her again, not after tonight. As I watched her hurriedly pack her bag, I felt my heart pounding in my chest. But also a strange clarity. I'd been blind for too long. I'd given her everything, my love, my trust, and she'd thrown it all away. Now it was my turn. By the time she was ready, I took her by the arm and led her out to the car. She didn't resist much, just silent tears. I helped her into the passenger seat, then got in myself. I didn't look at her as I pulled away from the cabin, leaving that chapter of my life behind. The drive was quiet. I could feel the weight of everything we'd lost, but I also felt something else, a strange sense of liberation. She was gone and I was finally free. When we reached the city, I handed her the keys and the phone. "Here," I said coldly. "You can start fresh somewhere else, but don't come back, don't try to contact me, this is over." She looked at me desperate. "Please, goodbye," I cut her off. "And don't bother trying to explain, I don't want to hear it." I watched her walk away, her suitcase dragging behind her, her figure shrinking into the night. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and something else, relief. She betrayed me, yes, but I was finally rid of the lie. I sat there for a moment, staring at the road ahead. The cold wind cut through my jacket, but I didn't care. I'd done what I had to do. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes you have to take control and do what's right for yourself. My mind was finally clear that night. I knew I'd be okay, even if I didn't feel it right away. I'd lost her, but I'd gained something else, peace. And that, in the end, was worth more than any apology or regret she could ever give. I got up, started the engine, and drove off into the dark. The past was gone. The future was mine to shape, and I'd be damned if I let anyone ruin that again. Want me to continue? The days that followed were a blur of emptiness and clarity. I threw myself into work, kept the house clean, and avoided thinking about her. It was easier that way, like putting a bandage over a wound that still bled beneath. I kept telling myself I'd done the right thing, that I'd finally cut loose the dead weight of betrayal. But underneath, I knew this was just the beginning. An end, yes, but also a new chapter I wasn't sure I was ready for. I had my plan, though, and I stuck to it. I couldn't let her get away with it, not without some kind of reckoning. I needed her to understand that her lies had consequences. I started gathering evidence, screenshots from her messages, copies of her emails, testimonies I was collecting from people I knew she'd confided in. I wasn't going to just walk away and pretend it never happened. One afternoon, I sat in my home office, going over everything. It felt good to have control again, like I was finally taking back what she'd taken from me. I knew I had to be careful, though. I couldn't let her know I was onto her, at least not yet. I had to be strategic, precise. That's when I remembered Jenna's messages. I still had her number saved, and I knew I could use it. I sent her a quick text, something casual, pretending I was just checking in. "Hey, Jenna. Heard you and Mark were planning a little getaway last night. Everything okay?" The reply was almost immediate. "Yeah, just some fun. Things got a little out of hand, you know how it is. Why?" I played it cool, just figured I'd check in. "Lisa told me she was feeling stressed, didn't expect her to be out so late. Anyway, hope everything's all right." I saw the message disappear, then a new one flickered in. "Look, I don't know what Lisa told you, but I swear, we didn't do anything that bad. We're just friends." I knew better. The proof I had was damning enough, but I wanted her to sweat a little, to understand that I wasn't just blindly trusting her anymore. I was already planning my next move. I made a list of all her contacts I could leverage, friends, acquaintances, even her own family if I had to. The goal was to create a web, a kind of trap from which she couldn't escape. I wasn't about to let her spin her stories and keep hiding behind her lies. That night I sat on the sofa, feeling the familiar sting of betrayal burn fresh in my chest. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her sneaking out, her face flushed, the sock outside the door. The worst part was knowing she was probably planning her next move, maybe even already trying to cover her tracks further. Then I remembered the key step. I had to make her see that I wasn't going to tolerate it anymore. I wanted her to understand that what she did was unforgivable. So I drafted a message I was going to send her the next morning. Short, cold, and final. "Lisa," it said, "you thought you could cheat, lie, and walk away. but I've collected enough proof to make sure everyone knows what you did. It's over. I don't want to see or hear from you again. Keep your distance or I'll take legal action. Consider this your final warning." I reread it a few times, then hit send. A strange feeling washed over me, relief mixed with anger. I'd finally taken control and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. This was the beginning of the end and I was ready for it. The next morning I called a lawyer, showed her everything I had collected. We discussed my options, the best way to file for divorce, and how to protect myself legally from her attempts to spin stories or claim innocence. I was going to make sure she paid for this destruction, even if it took months or years. As I hung up, I looked at her phone number in my call log. I knew I should delete it, erase all traces, but I left it there. A reminder of what I was fighting against, of the betrayal I'd uncovered. I was finally moving forward, and for the first time in a long while, I felt some semblance of peace. Not because I was happy about losing her, but because I finally had clarity. I knew what I had to do and I was prepared to see it through. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just ending things. It's making sure the other person understands the damage they caused and the price they pay. And I was just getting started. Want me to go on? The day I officially handed her the keys and the final paperwork felt surreal. I knew I was making a clean break, but a part of me still felt hollow. I'd spent so long trusting her, believing in us, and now it was just gone. Everything I thought was real had crumbled in front of my eyes. Still, I felt a strange sense of relief, like finally breathing after holding my breath for too long. She looked at me with wide eyes, tears streaking her face. Her voice cracked as she tried one last time to plead. "Please, can't we just talk? Maybe there's a way to fix this." I looked at her, cold and distant. "There's nothing left to fix," I said quietly. "You chose your path. I gave you every chance and you threw it away. I won't be part of this anymore." I reached into my pocket, pulled out the keys, and gently placed them in her trembling hand. Her fingers curled around them, but her grip was loose, like she knew this was the end of everything. I didn't want to hurt her further, but I also knew I couldn't let her manipulate me again. I had to stand firm, to finish what I started. With one last deep breath, I turned and walked away from her, out of the house, out of that chapter of my life. The sound of her voice calling after me faded behind me, but I didn't look back. I'd made my choice. I knew I'd be okay, even if I didn't feel it at that moment. As I got into my car, I looked at the house one final time, its empty windows, the yard that once held our laughter, now silent. I felt the weight of everything I'd been through, but I also felt a strange lightness. It was over. The betrayal, the lies, the heartbreak, all behind me now. Driving away, I played it over in my mind. The meetings, the evidence, the plan, her desperate tears, the final goodbye. I realized I'd done what I had to do, not just for myself, but for my dignity. I'd taken control of the chaos and turned it into a clean break. No more excuses, no more lies. I stopped at a small on the way home, ordered a coffee, and sat outside in the sunlight. The warmth hit my face and seeped into my bones. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I was finally free. Free from her, from the deception, from the heartbreak. Looking around at the world continuing on, I thought about all the times I doubted myself, all the nights I'd spent trying to hold everything together. That's when it clicked. I was stronger than I thought. I had survived this. I'd faced betrayal head-on and come out the other side. And maybe, just maybe, I'd rebuild what I'd lost, piece by piece. Because that's what life was about, learning, forgiving, and moving forward, no matter how bloody the battles were. I took a sip of my coffee, feeling the bitter warmth settle in. The pain still lingered, but so did a spark of hope. In that moment, I knew I'd never let anyone betray me that way again. I'd learned my lesson. The hard way. Trust is fragile, something you have to earn every day. And as I drove home, I promised myself I'd never forget it. Because sometimes, the only way to heal is to cut out what's killing you and walk away with your head held high. That's what I did, and I was finally ready to start again. And that's the story of how I took back my life, one hard lesson at a time.